Sharma, and I welcome you all to the Dialogues on Development Management DoDM 2025. Dialogues on Development Management is India's leading conference on development management for reimagining how we build and lead social purpose organizations. In 2024, it convened over 1,100 participants from 475 plus organizations. The 2025 edition goes even further, with new voices, bold ideas, and immersive sessions to walk away with practical insights, fresh perspectives, and the connections to strengthen your leadership and amplify your impact. DoDM has been made possible as part of collaboration and co-creation between 20 partner organizations, 3 funding partners, and a galaxy of speakers and thinkers from across the sector, and many more. Today's event includes an opening plenary, 4 immersive tracks, research paper presentations, and masterclasses. The tracks have the following themes: the art and science of decision-making, strengthening the core for social change, financing the future for social change, and delivering social impact at scale. We now begin the first event of the day, the opening plenary, on Viksit Bharat and the role of development management. As we move towards the goal of Viksit Bharat at the rate 2047, we opened this year's conference with a powerful conversation on what it will take to get there, and social purpose organizations, SPOs, will be central to this journey. This plenary will explore how SPOs can lead and contribute meaningfully to the nation's progress. The focus of this plenary is to envision a Viksit Bharat through the lens of development management. Imagine the India of 2030 and hear perspectives on what it will take to build leadership, talent, and institutional capabilities across Samaaj, Sarkaar, and Bazaar. I invite Ravi Sridharan, co-founder and president of ISDM, for the opening address.
Good morning. It's such a pleasure to see an almost full auditorium at this early hour in the morning. I know we had a slight delay in starting, and apologies for that. But really wanted to talk about this whole idea of dialogues on development management. When we started ISDM, we started with this idea of dialogues, and we believe that good, rich content for a new domain would be created through diverse participation in the dialogues. Today, this is the 3rd edition of DoDM, and we have a record number of registrations. We expect more than 1,000 delegates today in this auditorium, and each one of those 1,000 delegates brings a unique background, a unique perspective, and a unique experience. And we believe that diversity is hugely important and critical for any meaningful dialogue. We have in the auditorium today one of my favorite groups, which is the students of ISDM. It's fantastic that they can be part of this event and meet some of you and listen to the conversations. We have, other students, we have faculty, we have philanthropists, we have grassroots workers, we have representation from almost every state in the country today, and that surely bodes for a fantastic day ahead of dialogues. I hope each one of you, at the end of the day, feels like it was a day well spent. I'll take 10 minutes to share some opening thoughts for today's DoDM. I hope you're all comfortable with DoDM. DoDM is Dialogues on Development Management. It rolls off our tongue much easier as DoDM. Uh, Over the next 25 years, um, India is likely to see huge economic progress. And today we are a $4.5 trillion economy. We'll end up somewhere in the vicinity of a $25 trillion economy by India at 2047. And as you all know, we're on a journey to Viksit Bharat and Amrit Kal. But what we also know is that uh, this economic growth will translate into huge development capital. The country today spends about 8% of its GDP on development expenditure, and that's roughly about $350 billion. So when we become a $25 trillion economy, that's almost $2 trillion of development economy. And $2 trillion is as big as the GDP of this entire country just a decade ago. The question today for us is not whether we'll have the money for development, for social progress. The question really is, do we have the talent to manage that development capital? And that's really the big question, because if you're not able to manage that, we know where we will be heading. And this is something that I hope through the day, and certainly with the plenary session, we'll start talking about, which is how do we prepare ourselves for this journey over the next 20, 30 years. This is for the first time in centuries, maybe even in a millennium, that India has the economic momentum, it has the demographic advantage, and one would argue the geopolitical breathing space to actually make a difference to 1 billion people. 1 billion people is 1/7 of humanity, and it's really a big difference to humankind in many ways. The only thing I would argue is that this is a huge window of opportunity, not seen in centuries before, probably not going to be seen in centuries after. However, this is a window of opportunity. It's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee that economic progress will naturally translate into social progress and for all. It's an opportunity, and we have to figure out how do we tap into this opportunity that lies ahead of us. In recent months, you would have seen conversations by different sectors in the country talking about how to prepare for the Viksit Bharat, the Amrit Kal for India at 100. And you'll hear things like, for example, the energy sector has been discussing how much energy does this country need at that point in time. And there are data like they would like to create about 500 gigawatts of power through renewable sources and account for at least 50% of our energy to come from there. You have the motor industry talking about how do we convert at least 70% of commercial vehicles into EV, and 30% of new car sales into EV, and so on and so forth. You have the manufacturing sector that's talking about how do we make manufacturing 25% of the country's GDP and create 100 million jobs. At this point, we should reflect on ourselves as the sector, as a social sector, and ask ourselves, how are we preparing for that journey? What are the things that we need to be thinking about? What should be the scale and size of social purpose organizations? What should be the role of technology and AI in the work that we do in development? How do we empower and create a vibrant space for the younger generation who will be handling these important responsibilities in the decades ahead? How do we work across Samaaj, Sarkaar, and Bazaar to make sure that these 25 years translate into huge social progress in this country? One of the things that we all know is that for any meaningful, sustainable progress, the 3 pillars of society, Samaaj, Sarkar, and Bazaar, that is the state, the markets, and civil society, need to be very strong and vibrant, need to work with each other, and that's how we will achieve progress. The state can create policy, enforce rights, and invest in public goods. The market can innovate, scale, and create wealth, while civil society can reach the last mile, mobilize communities, and protect the most vulnerable. But none of these pillars can solve India's development challenges alone. Believing otherwise is not just unrealistic, it's dangerous. The only way forward is genuine collaboration where these three pillars work together with true respect and a shared vision of a Viksit Bharat and Amrit Kal. Yet, even with all this potential, there is something missing. We have ideas, we have passionate founders and funders, we have leaders, we have committed policymakers. What we lack, and this is an urgent problem, is management talent to manage that development capital. We need a generation of professional leaders and managers in the development space who can integrate people, processes, and technology, navigate complex relationships and stakeholders, bring strategic thinking and data-driven decision-making to development work. In the 2040s, we could be managing, as I said, a $2 trillion development economy, but without trained development managers, we will waste capital, we will waste time, and waste a chance of not just of a lifetime, but of a millennium. This is really where ISDM has its genesis to be a catalyst for building a vibrant development management ecosystem in the country. We are here to develop the talent that can multiply the impact of every rupee of development capital. We're here to connect talent, institutions, and ideas so that India's development capital works harder, smarter, and fairer for the entire country, for the society, and indeed the planet. Our mission is intergenerational. What we do in the next 20, 30 years, and I mean all of us in this room, will shape India for the next 200, 300 years. Let me leave you with this closing thought that this is not a slow burning, slow building challenge. It's a sprint within a marathon. And it's an urgent sprint. We need to move fast. This window is going to be there for another 20, 30 years. And if we miss that boat, we risk creating probably one of the most unequal countries in the world. If we are able to seize the opportunity, the time, and the development capital, we could create one of the most amazing countries and be a role model for the entire global South. In the times to come, people will remember that there was a lot of money that this country made, but the question that they will ask is, what did we do with it for the citizens of this country? I hope we have some great conversations. I'm really excited about the plenary that's just going to start in another couple of minutes. But I hope all of you have a wonderful day and participate in the dialogues on development management. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi. I now invite on stage Sonia Singh, our moderator for the session today. Sonia is the founder and CEO of SSA India. Prior to this, she was the editorial director of the NDTV Group. She has been one of the country's most prominent broadcast television journalists, an award-winning anchor and editor over the last 3 decades. She has been a permanent invitee to the NDTV board and the board of the News and Digital Broadcasters Association, where she has been instrumental in creating broadcast and digital policy frameworks. She is also the author of Defining India, which is based on her exclusive interactions with 15 of India's leading icons that included prime ministers, presidents, Nobel laureates, and prominent newsmakers from various fields. We welcome you, Sonia. I now welcome all our distinguished speakers for the plenary session on the stage. We have with us Ashish Dhawan. Ashish is the founder, CEO of the Convergence Foundation. He is also the founding chairperson of Ashoka University and Central Square Foundation. He serves on the governing board of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Before his second career as a philanthropist, he was among India's most successful private equity investors, and he also founded and ran Chris Capital, the country's leading private equity firm. Next, we have Amarjeet Sinha. Amarjeet is an ex-IAS officer and a senior fellow at the Center for Social and Economic Progress. Amarjeet has a lifetime commitment to work for transforming lives and livelihoods of the deprived households through human well-being. He served as member of the Public Enterprises Selection Board and was earlier posted as advisor to the Prime Minister, looking after the social sector and rural initiatives. Amarjeet is also the renowned author of 2 books, The Last Mile, Turning Public Policy Upside Down, and An India for Everyone, A Path to Inclusive Development. Next, we have with us Mirai Chatterjee. Mirai is the director of SEWA's social security team, including healthcare, childcare, and insurance, and the chairperson of SEWA Cooperative Federation. She was the general secretary of the Self-Employed Women's Association, SEWA. She also serves as chairperson of the Global Informal Workers and Policymakers Network, Women in Informal Employment Globalizing and Organizing, and is also on the board of Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship. She was conferred the Global Achievement Award by the School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins University. Once again, I warmly welcome you all. Over to you, Sonia.
Thank you, Soumya, and thank you to ISDM for inviting us and really for conceiving of this plenary, which I think is so relevant today. And what a remarkable confluence we have here of the 3 themes Ravi just mentioned, really of government, society, and entrepreneurship and business all coming together for a social purpose. So thank you all very much on the panel for being here. Let me begin by really asking that Viksit Bharat, in a sense, means so many different things to different people. So, Mirai, I'd love to get your perspective on how, when we talk about 2047, India reaching these numbers, where do you think organizations, the Indian people, and really the social sector and social purpose are included in this?
Well, thanks a lot, Sonia, and delighted to be here with all of you and share some thoughts and experiences. Sonia, first of all, I think that it's a really good and important time for development management. I think we need more and more development managers, and it's wonderful to see so many in this room. I think development management has a critical role to play in Viksit Bharat. But a couple of things, rather questions, come to mind. The first question that comes to mind is, what do we mean by development management? Is it technocratic management? Is it knowledge and skills and the latest of management? Will it be able to also incur a sense of empathy and compassion in our young development managers, so that they appreciate and are sensitive to the cultural diversity of our country, to the different communities, and are more inclusive and also promote equity? These are questions that come to my mind. The other question that comes to my mind is, how do we create a talent pool? How do we excite and challenge people to join this sector, which many of us who are in this sector have not only found it challenging and inspiring, but also very fulfilling and satisfying to contribute in whichever way we can. And of course, ISDM is doing a lot for classroom learning and also experiential learning, fieldwork, etc. But I wanted to share that one of the things that we have found in SEWA that has been transformational is what we call Exposure Dialogue Program. And actually, we started it for senior policymakers like yourself, Amarjeet. But then our young managers said, what about us? And what we do is we embed a young budding manager in the home of an informal woman worker, one of our SEWA sisters, and they live there for a couple of days, and they follow her daily cycle. If she gets up at 4 in the morning to milk her cow, well, they do that with her. If she walks the streets of Ahmedabad collecting waste, they do that with her. They do her household chores with her. They have a dialogue with her about her life, her struggles, and it's not just all gloom and doom, about, you know, how she has mitigated so many situations and adapted in her life, how she has led not only her family but her community. And what our students and our young people say is that this is transformational. We just recently had a couple of students, and they said it changed their life. It gave them direction. It was inspiring, challenging. So I think one of the things we have to ask ourselves is, for Viksit Bharat, how do we prepare a cadre, a team, a talent pool, and excite people? And the third question that comes to mind is, who will be the development managers? And of course, all of you in this room, many of us, but also what we found at SEWA is that people who are from the working class, who are from the very deprived communities, disadvantaged, historically disadvantaged communities, often make excellent managers with support and with encouragement. I'm not saying that it's only they who should be the development managers, but you know, it's important for people embedded in the communities. They don't need to be taught empathy. They don't need to be taught this is how these communities are. They also can develop professionals. In fact, we were just discussing that we need to challenge the definition of professionals. Is it just people who have higher degrees, or could it also be those who have experience and solid work experience on the ground and lived experience? So these are some of the questions which come to mind. Of course, we need the management skills and the latest in management practice, but also how do we get empathy and compassion into the development management process? Thanks.
So Mr. Sinha, picking up on some of the points that Mirai made, but really looking, I mean, when you use the words Viksit Bharat, it somehow seems to represent a unified whole, which of course in a larger system you are. But also when you go more granular, you'll see that there are so many different elements, so many different themes, whether it's gender, equity, many other issues. How does development management, or even just development people interested in the same goal, come together for this? What is the contribution we can make?
Thank you. Thank you for that question, Sonia, and thank you, ISDM, for this opportunity. Yes, I do have a vision of Viksit Bharat. And to me, that begins from each and every Indian citizen having an opportunity to develop their fullest human potential. Ultimately, where will the inclusive India come from? It will come from an India where everybody gets an opportunity to develop their fullest potential. If that happens, automatically productivity levels go up, we are able to secure wages of dignity for more people, and most importantly, we are able to ensure human well-being on scale. If these are the issues that we are looking at, clearly there's no going away from what Ravi calls partnerships, professionals, and people. How do we bring partners, professionals, and people together? Mirai put it very well. Professionals can be from both ends. You need community resource professionals. A very good example is the National Rural Livelihood Mission, which has over 600,000 women who are today banking correspondents, who are today agriculture extension workers, who are today animal husbandry extension workers. They are from the community, but have acquired the skills to be able to carry out these functions. The other, of course, is professionals in the system. Now that I think more so in India than many other countries, because the administration that we inherited at the time of independence was designed more for the regulation and public order function, for revenue collection. That same administration, we have made some changes there to make it into a development administration, but I'm afraid we still don't have all the skill sets that you need to run development administration. For this reason, programs like the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and the National Rural Health Mission, which I've been associated with, we started by creating a 6% management cost resource through which we hired the best of professionals. You know, from institutions, IHMR in Jaipur, batches after batches joining as hospital managers, and so on. So clearly we need those skill sets which are missing, and which institutions like ISDM and many others, IRMA, so many of them, prepare. So clearly the professionals issue. On the community action issue, the people issue, I find if I do an overview of programs across the country, the one which have sustained and have done well, I will just name a few of them on which there is unanimity. The Rural Livelihood Mission is one of them. Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana is another. If I take just these two examples, what we find most distinctive, and that's important for our Viksit Bharat journey, they respected professionals, they respected communities, and they respected technology as a means. I must clarify why technology as a means. Technology is a great enabler. Today, a 90-year-old widow on her deathbed can be paid her pension there if you have a banking correspondent from the community there. Now, this is the real challenge. The last mile, on which I published my last book in 2023, ultimately, for Viksit Bharat, we need to sort out our last mile. Resource-wise, we will be better. Age profile-wise, demography-wise, we will be in a position to do it, but only if we invest where we need to invest most. And I'm saying this because currently we are engaged in a study called a public report on secondary education, where we are studying the 14 to 21 age group, their human capital aspirations, and what is it that the system is offering them. My own analysis, I am not an economist, but I do read a lot of what gets written. To escape the middle income trap that everyone now talks about, our only way of moving up from the 6% to the 8% growth rate that we need to become developed, that we need to aspire to the $13,000 per capita income, it requires better human capital on scale. It requires more professionals. It requires partnerships, public, people. The distinctions of government and private need to go. We need to create a new era of community institutions, and that's why collaborative governance is what can take us to Viksit Bharat. More and more that we engage in decentralized community action, better and better would be the outcomes of a large number of public goods sector, because the critique on India, we got many things right. We've got macroeconomic indicators are good, so many things. But where we need to focus on primary education, primary health, nutrition, clean environment, clean urban spaces. If we want more urbanization, we have to be prepared for it. I'll stop here. Thank you.
No, we'll explore many of those themes, Mr. Sinha, but Ashish, your perspective really on the points raised so far, because in a sense you came from a different world, a world of, say, equity, capitals, outcomes, and here the battles perhaps that you face every day, or challenges and opportunities are very different. Where do you see this whole aspect of development management coming in here? And really, when you look at defining Viksit Bharat, are we looking at it in terms of GDP? Are we looking at it in terms of malnutrition, social indicators of health and education? How do you define Viksit Bharat today? And where do you think development management, in your perspective, contributes to this?
No, thank you. So I think that for me, Viksit Bharat is about economic growth and about inclusive human development. It's a combination of both. I don't think bottoms up will get us there alone. I do think that focusing on the right policies and the right incentives for markets to work is absolutely necessary for us to grow at 8-9% going forward. So it's a combination of both. I completely agree with Amarjeet on everything he said, but I don't think that in and of itself will allow us to grow at 8-9%. And I think the government is trying to do both now. It's working on whether it's infrastructure development, incentives, through PLI, ease of doing business. I think there's a number of things that need to happen to stimulate growth. And of course, you need good human capital as well on the supply side to make that, and in order to ensure that it's inclusive. Our growth, we've had growth in India. I mean, in the last 25 years, we've grown 10x in dollar terms, in terms of our GDP. But if you look at it, we really haven't had structural transformation. So by structural transformation, I mean people moving out of the farm into services and manufacturing. And our labor force participation rates are still very low. And I think that's what we really need to focus on. there's no country that has really developed and gotten to that Viksit stage of becoming developed or hitting upper middle income and the threshold of developed without doing that. Even Vietnam, which is somewhat higher per capita income than India, has been doing better of late, has 25% of its workforce in agriculture, because it's really been able to pull people out of agriculture into manufacturing. They've succeeded more than India with the China Plus One in services, etc. So it takes two to tango, in my mind. I think where development management can play a role is recognizing that India's problems are problems at scale. You know, if we have to improve education, health, nutrition, what Amarjeet talked about, it's not just about running better NGOs. I think that's one part of it. The other part is, how can the non-profits also in India collaborate with government so that we do more systemic work? I think if we want to achieve this, it's not a long period of time, 20, 23 years. And we've tried last 25 years with a very vibrant non-profit ecosystem. Yet, if you look at our nutrition indicators or our education indicators, they are abysmally low, you know, even though we've had economic development. So I really think that apart from talent coming into the NGO sector, we need to be able to work more systemically. Government spends 9% of GDP on the social sector. It really is the main actor. And if we're working in, the NGO's role in a way is to do the piloting, demonstrate that something can work, but then ultimately get government to adopt it, and then work and assist government in delivering it at scale. That's at least my view, that development management needs to move in that direction, otherwise we'll never be able to solve these problems at scale.
Mirai, if you could comment, because really one of the challenges we talk about is the imbalance of power structures in a sense, the government being the main contributor, the main administrator in it, but also how do you make sure that the voices of the marginalized, how do you make sure that in these plans that are being laid out, how do the voices of those excluded matter and really come, in a sense, center stage? I mean, you worked with millions of women who do that, but how does that actually become something which is part of the development mindset in India?
Thanks a lot, Sonia. But I'd like to also just take
Sure.
off or link with what Ashish just said. I mean, totally agree with you on growth and the need for both bottom-up and top-down, or what a colleague calls the nutcracker approach. But I also think we need to ask ourselves hard questions. What type of growth? Growth for whom? And what we see in our country is a lot of uneven growth, I'm sorry to say. And we all know that, it's no secret. We see regional imbalances. We see what Amartya Sen famously called Southern California along with Sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, how long is this kind of growth going to be tenable? I mean, we would argue from our bottom-up perspective that neither is this sustainable, nor is it ethical. I mean, it's morally indefensible, in fact. And we see more and more this inequality gap, even after COVID. People who were already wealthy became even more wealthy. And many of my SEWA sisters and their families are still struggling. So I think we have to ask ourselves hard questions here as well. You asked about how do we get representation and voice. So in our experience, it's through what we call organizing, or what some people call building horizontal solidarity, which is building decentralized membership-based democratic organizations, in our case of women, but women and men. For example, cooperatives. My colleagues and I are engaged in building cooperatives, which are not only inclusive, democratic, but I would say also they're laboratories for democratic functioning. And it's in these membership-based organizations where women and historically disadvantaged communities like Dalits and Adivasis find voice and representation. It's a safe space where they can grow together. They can share the fruits of their economic enterprise, collective economic enterprise together. And I think these kind of workable examples is also what government and others in the private sector are interested in. And as Ashish said, these can then be scaled up. So we find that unless you have this collective strength at the grassroots, apart from the fact that it gives us insights, inspiration, and so on, when you have this collective strength, when you have this solidarity organizations, that's when government and others become interested and ask us what works, what doesn't work, and so on. So I think this is very important. And also, if we are to have inclusive Viksit Bharat, I feel that when we design programs and services, it's important for those for whom these are designed to have voice and representation through consultative processes, and we have had experiences of that as well. For example, when the Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, one of the forebears of the PMJ, Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, was being created, I must say the people from government, central government came, spent 3 days with us, interacted with the women, had workshops, and then we co-created. So I think there are these kind of models and approaches where voice and representation, but it's not just at the local level, but it's at national and global level also, that voice and representation, particularly of those who are normally excluded. And just to give you one example, one of my favorite examples, in fact, is one of my SEWA sisters, Chanchiben, who's a landless agricultural laborer, and she's disabled, and she also is Dalit. And through the cooperative, our health cooperative, she became, on the board, elected to the board of directors of the cooperative, and then she had more voice, she was more confident, and then the entire village asked her to be the sarpanch. I mean, unheard of. This is social change, small, incremental perhaps, but I'm sure there are millions of stories like this across the country if people are given the opportunity and the space to grow and develop with encouragement and support.
So actually, just listening to you, I'd love to ask Mr. Sinha, when you were in government and now when you're out of government, what is the one thing you learned that government should never do, and what is the one thing that government must do when you're looking at really at the development sector?
Thank you. In fact, it gives me an opportunity to begin from what Ashish just said before that. And the lesson from government is very clear. Post 1991, as a nation, economic reforms, liberalization, deregulation, we have managed as a nation to grow at 6.5–7% over these years. Clearly, there is a very strong case for further liberalization and markets to have a play. When I was arguing about human capital, I was arguing in the context of India of 2024, 2025. We must continue the ease of doing business. We still have a long way to go there. We must continue to deregulate. You must continue to have government out of sectors where it is not needed. You need a far greater level playing field for market players to make the best of what is possible. But having said that, I foresee the limiting factors. If I am to look at, I was told to look at 20 to 2030, I, for one, do look at the underbelly of cities, do look at the incompleteness of that transition from education to skills and employment. I do look at productivity, because these are what are likely to come in the way to where we want. I don't at all, we need high rates of economic growth, because nothing else would have been possible otherwise, because we've grown for 35, 36 years. So as somebody in government, an appreciation to deregulate, an appreciation to carry out market reforms, an appreciation to let people develop enterprise to the maximum possible, to create platforms of shared growth, keeping in view some of the point that Mirai made, how is it more balanced? Because again, I speak on evidence. If you look at private sector investments, why does it go to the similar areas of the country, whether it is in Tamil Nadu, whether it is in Bangalore, whether it is in Delhi, whether it is in Gujarat, whether it is in Maharashtra, wherever investments are happening, many other factors are responsible, including the way the states welcome industry. But let us not underplay the role of human capital. It does make a difference. I can set up a unit in Siri Perambudur much faster, automobile or a phone unit, than in, say, Bihar, where those sets are not there. So I think I was just making that comment in the context of where we were. But as a government, we should be doing much more of the human capital. No one else is going to do that. Education, public health, nutrition, safer cities, clean environment, pollution-free environments. These are sectors, reforms in the judiciary. These are sectors we need to do on a very, very fast pace, as also the market reforms for greater liberalization, for more entrepreneurs to come into their full being. Thank you.
And of course, at a time of geopolitical uncertainty and the Trump effect, let's see what happens on reforms. But Ashish, many say that this is the time for another 1991 moment, that India is poised, and to get to the ambitious goals that the Prime Minister has set, you need to actually completely reset. It can't be business as usual. There's also this whole thought, and the Convergence Foundation does so much work, you of course, Ashoka University, but also looking at primary education. What should the role be of private, what should the government be looking at in terms of primary education, of creating that human capital right from the age of 0 to 6, there's a new education policy as well. How much focus and I would say also mission mode should we be in, should development be looking at in terms of areas like education and health, as well as looking at business reforms, deregulation, ease of business, but what about ease of living in a sense?
Sure, I'll briefly touch on both. So I think education, I'm very passionate about. I believe we need to dramatically improve, and particularly the early years, the 0 to 8. So we already have the Nipun Bharat mission, which is running, and I think for the first time, it's actually starting to show some results, whether you look at ASAR data or you look at the Parak data, the government's data. And I can tell you first-hand experience looking at monitoring data from different states, there is a real momentum and a real improvement. I'll give you one example of a good non-profit that has worked. Learning and Language Foundation, Dheer Chingran, who set it up 10 years ago. Varanasi district, where they worked with just a small team supporting the district. Really the work was done by government and supporting with some capacity building, help with the coaching layer, some tools, good teaching learning material. A dramatic improvement, almost a doubling in old reading fluency of the correct words per minute children were reading. And I mean, you've seen Uttar Pradesh go on ASAR from 7% of children at, achieving reading benchmarks to now 28% in 6 or 8 years. And I think the reason they were able to do it is because they work systemically with the government. So I'll give you an example from early childhood. So I think in the early years of school, we started to do some things better. We definitely need a Balvatika in school. So that's a big reform, which is part of the NEP, but hasn't been implemented at scale. Some states are doing it. Uttar Pradesh is just in the process, Odisha. But children in private schools start with junior K, then go to senior K, then 1, 2, 3. By the time they hit class 3, which is that critical year, they are typically literate in numerate or have a better chance of being literate in numerate. We need at least a K, even if not a junior K, in the government school system. And I think that's one big reform going forward. I think early childhood in the ECE or Anganwadi system, we grossly underinvest. We grossly underinvest. So I think first we need to double the investment that's there and really look at, it's not just the investment, but we definitely, I mean, India, if you look at early childhood education as a percentage of education investment, it's about 3%. In the target is 10% as defined by UN, etc. Many other countries, peer countries, are at 6, 7%. So I think we need to double where we are, and we need some real reforms there in terms of the way we need to, the Anganwadi worker is just overburdened. So I think those are two very important areas. Again, a lot of credit to the team at Rocket Learn, who's worked, and many other organizations. But this is one example of an organization that developed a technology product and has taken it to 3 lakh Anganwadi workers with a plan to go to 7.5 lakh Anganwadi workers, but also works systemically on some policy reforms as well. So I think there's hope. I think there is, government has woken up to the importance of human capital and outcomes. And I think the social sector also, there's a move to work more systemically in partnering with government to achieve it. We are spending $80–90 billion a year on education. We ought to be achieving results, in the next 5–7 years, not have to wait till Viksit Bharat.
So in fact...
Sorry, one more point on
yes.
the economic development part. While I agree with Amarjeet that we've done a lot of reforms, India's reforms have not prioritized job creation. So, Vietnam prioritized and China prioritized labor-intensive sectors. Our big businessmen who really lobby for reforms are in capital-intensive sectors. Who was lobbying for shoe manufacturing, for garment manufacturing, for toy manufacturing, for sporting goods, so we need more labor-intensive industry. We have not had the right policies for SMEs, and we need to distinguish M from the rest of SME and have the right policies, which will create a lot of jobs. So I don't think we've had policies that have really targeted job creation versus just general economic growth.
So really, as we draw to an end of this, let's look at the good news, because I think Ravi had hope written on his shoulder. I see all the young students here, smiling faces. What's the hope we're looking at? If you had to say that on this journey, and I think it is a journey which will have speed bumps, it will have acceleration at different times. What's the big hope that each of you have this morning for the next years ahead?
So I'm going to speak about hope in a minute, but I want to mention about regulation.
Oh no, those are two
Which
contradictions.
is, well, yes, but I feel like, for the people sector, which are cooperatives, which are self-help groups, which are collective businesses of people, we haven't had the deregulation that we've been struggling for. And let me give you one example. We run a micro-insurance cooperative, all by women, and we've been banging on the doors of the insurance regulator for 30 years, saying to reduce the capital requirement because the mainstream insurance companies don't reach out to low-income families. That's a fact of life. They say simply, we don't know how to do that. You do it. So we're willing to do it, but if the capital requirement is 100 crores and we don't need 100 crores, then, how do we go about it? And then also in cooperatives, so much compliance, so many regulations, which the cooperatives at the grassroots, particularly women's cooperatives, struggle with. So just a quick comment on that. But yeah, I feel very hopeful. I mean, I've had the great privilege of working in this sector for several decades, and I see real transformation. On education, our first members were Angutha Chap. Now their daughters and granddaughters are in any sector, and not necessarily street vendors and beady rollers anymore. So that gives me a lot of hope. I have a lot of hope in the women of this country. I think that if they were given a chance to lead, they would be more inclusive, more peaceful, and more democratic. As I said earlier, in our experience during COVID is they first went to where the poorest and the weakest and the most vulnerable were. I think they would work hard to close the inequality gap. I think if given a chance, they would run a lot of the government programs till the last mile. That's another thing we've been saying to the government. Want Anganwadis? We have a childcare cooperative. We'd love to run them. You're not able to reach the last mile, so let's work together. So that leads me to the last point, which is collaboration and partnerships give me a lot of hope. Because in a sense, we are students forever, not just the students sitting in this room. There's a lot to learn from each other. There's a lot of common ground that we can find. There are differences, there are barriers, we have to fight it out. You'll remember during the International Conference on Population and Development many moons ago in Cairo, we had no common ground. The women's movement and the community health movement had no common ground with the government. We felt all you were interested was family planning, and we were interested in women's health and reproductive health and rights. And for 2 years, with the donors' support, UNFPA, I must say, and Government of India, we thrashed it out. We argued, we shared our experiences, but when we went to Cairo, we were a solid block. And we saw at the global level what were the forces that were aligned against women and against reproductive rights. The same arguments going on today. So this is just one example. If we work together, partner together, I think we can go a long way for Viksit Bharat and for a peaceful, more just and fairer world. With this huge inequality gap that we have, we've got to close that. It's just totally unethical. But I have hope, particularly in the women of this country and the people of our country, who are our greatest asset, if only we would recognize that.
Mr. Sinha.
No, there's a lot of hope. The pro-poor public welfare programs over the last 10, 15 years, which I've had an opportunity to lead and work on. A lot is possible when communities, the state and private sector, civil society, everybody comes together to work together. There are some exponential gains which are possible. Ashish was giving the example of Uttar Pradesh's gains in learning outcomes at the class 1, 2, 3 level. Now, it's possible. It's the realm of the possible. But that realm of the possible, for example, I've been arguing it for a long time, but I know this platform, I'd like to use it for it. We have a Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. Why don't we also have a Prime Minister's Human Development Council? All chief ministers, everybody sits together from the panchayat to the Prime Minister, same set of 18 or 20 indicators. Let the whole country monitor it at community level. You will see the change. And we need more money. These sectors, education, health, nutrition, we need governance reforms. We also need more money from the state governments, from the central government, from the local governments, because clearly across the world, we are looking at the success stories. Human capital is at the heart of a lot what happens, and we need to really focus on. I speak with a lot of hope. We've sorted out a lot of our problems. Poverty numbers have come down, chronic poverty in particular. And that being the case, it's an opportunity to exponentially grow by investing where it is needed most at this stage. Right from everybody at all levels of government, of society, coming together to ensure very basic human capital for all. That will be the inclusive India. Thank you.
Sorry, jump in over here. Just what Amarjeet said triggered a thought, and also what Ashish said on early childhood, which is a particular passion. I mean, it's high time we have universal childcare in this country. Good for children, good to buck malnutrition, and also good for the working poor of this country, for all of us. And we have calculated, Ashish, that if you invest in universal childcare, the extra investment is only 1% of GDP. I mean, surely that's not too much to ask for. And we have improved on our investments in health. But we're still not at the 3% of GDP, which you and I were on the Universal Healthcare Committee recommended. So the money is there. And back to what are our priorities? Where do we decide to invest in? And it must be decentralized investment as well.
Ashish, what gives you hope in development, in Viksit Bharat, in India right now?
So what gives me most hope is talent. I think ISDM is working on development management. Whether you look at talent in the not-for-profit sector, talent in the for-profit sector, I think the talent, the young people are much better than I am. So it's simple as that. So, and they are the ones who are going to build the nation over the next 20, 25 years. A second thing is I think that we do have more evidence now about what works than 20 years ago. So I think starting today, we can focus on the right things, and we have the tools, we have the resources also today, much more than we did 20 years ago, to be able to make the investment. So we should be able to do it. And the third, I would say, is a focus on outcomes. Yes. We are not just measuring activity inputs. We are looking at outcomes. And there's been a big change, even in education, if you look over the last 10 years, or focus on outcomes. It wasn't as strong earlier. And lastly, I will say this idea I'll come back to of systemic, which is government also is more open to working with, not just to go say, can you allow me to work in 10 schools or 100 schools, but in a more systemic manner. Amit was just having breakfast. We were having breakfast together. He was telling me about in agriculture, some work they'd done in Maharashtra with the Pani Foundation. And it was really a demonstration with a large number of farmers, but now the state has taken it statewide across all districts, because it's a proven model now. There's outcomes, and there's a desire to partner with non-profit sector because the state wants to achieve some outcomes. So I think for all those reasons, I'm extremely hopeful and optimistic.
Wonderful, Les, and I think that's a fantastic note to, well, I won't say the end, but to perhaps pause this discussion for now. And I know we're going to have lots more questions, but I think we also now have a fantastic address coming up. Sonia.
I now request Amit Chandra to please join us on stage. Amit Chandra is the co-founder of the A.T.E. Chandra Foundation. He is the chairperson and founder of Bain Capital's India office. Prior to this, he spent most of his professional career at DSP Merrill Lynch, where he retired as managing director and board member. He has served as a trustee of the Tata Trusts, chairperson of Give India and the Akanksha Foundation, and a board member of Tata Sons, Pyramid Enterprises, and Genpact, among other corporations. He is also a founder and trustee of Ashoka University and a member of the advisory boards of Britspan India and the Center for Social Impact and Philanthropy. I invite you on stage, Amit.
Thank you, Sonia. What a fantastic panel discussion to kick off this wonderful conference. Please give them a big hand again. On another note, this takes me back to the plenary session last year. And at the beginning of my session, I got a standing ovation. This time it's very humbling to get the welcome that I got. Just made me remember that Bollywood still trumps the social sector, because last time I was doing this session with Amir Khan. Look, it's really a pleasure to be back at DoDM. In just a couple of editions, this convention has become India's foremost platform for development management, where voices, ideas, experiences really come together to push the boundaries of what's possible. And I think this discussion was just a great example of that. Many of the thoughts truly resonated with me, and Sonia, I really liked how you ended it with hope. That's what keeps us going. That's what gets us up every morning to deal with problems of hundreds of millions of people and inspires us to do what many of us do. This year's theme of Viksit Bharat and the role of development management is not just something that's really urgent, but I think overdue by about 7 decades. A developed India, I think, cannot be defined by GDP numbers alone. Something that Mirai pointed out in her remarks, growth for whom, is a question I think we must ask. I do personally believe that true progress rests on not just how inclusive she is, but whether the wealth creation reflected by her booming stock markets percolates to aspirational districts, and the sustainability of her growth in a world that's exposed to all kinds of threats, but in which the weakest are actually the most vulnerable to them. So to deliver on such a vision, I think we really need to combine, as I think even Amarjeet and Ashish pointed out, top-down approaches with bottoms-up initiatives. Those that I believe are truly rooted in compassion, those that build a highly skilled army of talent that guards our social borders as fiercely as our country's borders are protected, and lay the foundation of institutions and movements that are truly aspirational, resilient, and sustainable. Now, I say this not just with the assistance of ChatGPT, but I stand before you drawing from my own organic journey of 25 years. I began with my wife writing small checks. That led to then volunteering stints alongside my day-side job. But gradually, along with my team at A.T.E. Chandra Foundation, I've had the opportunity to step into systemic change And now most of our time is actually taken up doing so in the area we have chosen, which is water, agriculture, and capacity building. Now, this path has been filled with one of learning, thanks to a ton of mistakes, which I encourage everyone to not shy away from. And it's actually the course corrections which have arisen from those which have resulted in seeing small ripple efforts, actually result in larger impact across now multiple states and impacting tens of millions of lives. Now, if there's one simple lesson at the end of it all, it is that progress is actually evolutionary. It comes from doing things increasingly deeper and pushing ourselves to be aspirational. So today, as I stand before you and thinking about the panel discussion which we just had, I'm actually going to try to summarize all of this into a framework, because I was told that one of the most important things when we sit on the other side is actually to have a clear takeaway. And so I'm going to give you a 5C framework for social progress. 4 of these are what I call foundational pillars we must build a skyscraper for socially Viksit Bharat, and one that lies at the heart of it all. So the first C is actually core. One of the biggest enemy, I believe, of good is whether we are donors, NGOs, or the government, is moving away from specialization and what we can really be great at. Mission creep is often our Achilles heel. It comes because our human brains seek diversification of ideas on a constant basis, or because our heart is actually tugged by suffering on what problems we see on a daily basis. And I was no different. I have most painfully had to withdraw from areas I was deeply passionate about for long periods of time, and now increasingly focus on farmer-related issues. And I can see the benefits for myself, and I should have done so earlier, but because I have now realized that even globally, most successful and enduring organizations are those that stay true to their mission and build great depth around them. I've actually often wondered whether we would be a very different nation in terms of outcomes if a reasonable part of our IAS cadre was actually groomed as specialists, much as their colleagues in IFS. Because then some of the best thinkers, which are often people I've met in the bureaucracy, if we would have just 2 to 3 such exceptional leaders in every state and the same at the center. Imagine such people with 2 decades of experience in health, education, livelihood, gender issues, environment. I personally believe we would have very different outcomes as a nation. The second C is capacity. This is something Amarjeet actually talked a lot about in his remarks, and is very close to my heart. I believe herein lies one of the social sector's biggest blind spot. When we build or run aspirational corporates, the board and investors are very focused on issues like, are we investing in leadership and talent development? What is our technology strategy? Is it adequate? Do we have the right investments in fundraising, marketing, research, M&E? Unless the organization is consistently a laggard, these are not considered overheads, something to be frowned upon. However, a very low percentage of our budget in India goes to building institutional capacity, and we need to change this. Amarjeet gave a great example of how we are now beginning to do this in the government itself. By the way, when we do this in the social sector, the difference is visible. If you read studies published by us on this topic in IDR, you will notice how organizations have a very high ROI from doing so in the social sector, and we hope donors will take note of this and stop treating capacity overhead of NGOs and recognize it as a critical area of growth. The third C is collaboration. Now, development is too complex and too large a problem for one actor alone. Consider the numbers. The government alone accounts for 93% of all social spending. Philanthropy, CSR is the rest, 7%, and the fragmentation within that 7% is staggering on both the donor side as well as the implementer side. That fact alone makes collaboration not just desirable, but an imperative. When collaboration is done right, Ashish gave a few examples, we see magic happen. CSF has worked with the government to create the Nipun Bharat FLN framework into NEP, and its own efforts came out of deep collaboratives built not just with donors, but with NGOs, and then finally with the government over a decade. Our own work in rejuvenation of water bodies across 9 states, taking a time-tested technique and having built an efficient process around it, is anchored around community mobilization, sitting on a technology platform. However, its key feature is a collaborative nature of supporting state capacity to deliver water security. Importantly, it wouldn't have got to where it is if it wasn't for a collaborative with Caring Friends, a movement in Maharashtra. And today, we have worked with multiple state governments to rejuvenate 12,000 water bodies across 18,000 villages. Another example is Arman's M-Mitra, which started as a mobile health service and has now reached 3 million women in the first phase and now is scaling nationwide to reach 47 million. These are all examples of how collaboration can turn good projects into systemic initiatives. The fourth C is catalytic change. Mirai talked about collectives. I do believe this is a key part of catalytic change. And I touched upon this briefly in my opening as well, that India's NGO sector is vast but highly fragmented. A Satwa study highlighted how top 200 NGOs combined are smaller than one major state government scheme or the budget of the largest NGO in Bangladesh. So if we want to see real change, we have to move away from incremental funding as donors to catalytic bets, or what I call big bets, or disruptive ideas that can transform an entire system. Now, Nandan Nelankani's efforts on UPI was one such big bet built on India Stack. It has, with all the efforts, impacted every Indian's life. An initiative Ashish touched upon, we've been involved with Pani Foundation, aims to tip 10 to 15% of farmers in every district of Maharashtra in just a 2 to 3 year period in partnership with the Maharashtra government. Catalytic change means daring to back ideas that might well fail, but when they succeed, will shift the lives of millions of people. Now, it takes me to the fifth C, which is at the heart of it all, compassion. At the center of everything lies compassion. It's easy to forget. Bureaucracy, technology, our own egos can create walls between us and those we seek to serve. Too often, organizations and even we as individuals land up serving our own reputations rather than those at the very margin. Compassion is what grounds us. It reminds us that the ultimate purpose of it is not just scale and efficiency, but human dignity, the well-being of those we seek to serve. And Gandhiji reminded us that the true purpose lies in this humble service, in persevering effort, and in bold courage. So, fellow travelers, as we look to Viksit Bharat 2047, I urge you to think more deeply about this 5C framework: core, capacity, collaboration, catalytic change, and compassion in whatever area you work in. If we strengthen our work around these pillars, I'm very sure that India will rise not just as an economic superpower, but as Amarjeet so eloquently put it, it will be the rise of the full potential of 1.4 billion Indians. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amit. Ladies and gentlemen, the floor is now open for the Q&A to the panelists.
Why don't you go ahead, sir? Can we get a mic?
Yeah.
Sure, we'll just get a mic to you.
I am M.K. Raina. I am Vice President of All India Senior Citizen Confederation. I would like to draw your attention to the senior citizen, which presently is 10% and is going to be 20% by Viksit Bharat. We call it Amrit Caller 2047. Nobody is talking about senior citizen. One point is that we should tap the potential of the senior citizen. Second is that we will have to take care of the cure, otherwise there will be a drain on the economy. Viksit Bharat supna hi nahi hoga. Thank you very much.
Mr. Sinha, I think that point, we talk about demographic dividend, but we're not looking at the rising senior population. Also the costs of whether it's health insurance, whether it's about healthcare, and the whole issue of private healthcare taking up now a major portion. Your thoughts?
In fact, sorry, the time being limited, yes. But I just wanted to mention about 6 weeks ago, I wrote for the Hindustan Times on the subject that you just mentioned. I also work on the Helpage India Foundation, where we are trying to look at how we can create self-help groups of elderly people. This has been experimented with the Livelihood Mission and the Helpage Foundation in Tamil Nadu in a few states with two great positive responses, where an opportunity to contribute continues even though they are old. As also lot many other issues that itself will take a long time. But I will urge you, if you can just look at this particular piece where the issues at least have been flagged, including the numbers.
Priority has to be given, that's the point.
I think Mr. Chandra had something to say, then Mirai will come to you. So Ashish, you can just go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I do think this is a highly underinvested area. I agree with you, but I don't think the fact that nobody is looking at it is correct. I was with Chris Gopal Krishan, one of the Infosys founders, just last week, and he was telling me that they are now beginning to build chapters in virtually every state. I think in a few states they've already started building chapters for the elderly. So, like many areas which are still massively underserved, education, health are probably overserved. Relative basis, everything is underserved. But this will undoubtedly get a lot more attention in the years ahead.
Mirai, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely agree with the gentleman. I just had 2 points. I think it's also about engaging the elderly. Now the elderly are, well, quite young as well and still have a lot to give. And I remember once visiting Shanghai, a childcare center, and it was exciting to see grannies and grandpas over there telling stories, singing songs, passing on traditions. I mean, I think these are ideas that we have to now begin to think about. And you're absolutely right, we haven't done enough, but we are beginning, as others have said. And I think the other really important point that keeps coming up is the care of the elderly. It's a huge service opportunity and it's a huge livelihood opportunity. We already have some care cooperatives in childcare but also in elder care. So it's a huge opportunity and it's also would be a great support to the working women of our country because it's they who do all the care work at home for the elderly. So it's both supporting the elderly to be as active as you can, as you are, and as long as they can be, and that we can all contribute to Viksit Bharat. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am, you had, if you can just get a mic to you. Yeah. Oh, sorry, then I'll come back to you after that.
I'm Dr. Vijayalakshmi. I am coming here from Trivandrum, capital city of Kerala, because I thought it is a meaningful discussion. That is what I traveled all the way to Delhi now today. But after observing this panel, this dialogue, I wanted to have two observations I will share with you. One thing, that is, now in India, more than 150 crores population, 75 crore women. Out of that, maybe 10% maybe in SEWA like that. The rest of the community, that human resources, how you are going to utilize for the development, Viksit Bharat. Because out of that, if you can ready to train 10 crore women for business owners, women entrepreneurs, then definitely it will be a great impact in the country. Secondly, I would like to suggest that, that leadership level, how far Viksit Bharat can train at least 10 crore women for the leadership level, that is for decision makers. If we can include these two in this journey of Viksit Bharat, definitely that will be meaningful travel, as well as India will be the best in the rest of the world. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So what I thought is that maybe we can take 2 or 3 questions together.
Can I go next,
and then
please?
different panelists can answer. I think here, Ravi, there's the person here had a question.
Can I go next, please?
I think we had taken the mic from him. Yeah, and then we'll go to the back. So are there mics at the back as well? Okay, so ma'am, we just let him go, and then I'll come to you right after, then we'll get the panel to answer. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So there's a lot of talk that is happening in the country about the ease of doing business. And we're talking today about development's role in Viksit Bharat. What do you think are the steps that are required by the government to actually promote development and allow ease of doing development? And I'm assuming it's difficult because everything is difficult in this country. So would love to get your thoughts on that.
Okay. And ma'am, go ahead, and then we'll just get the panel to respond.
Thank you. My name is Aditi. I come from Echo India. My question is regarding the capacity building aspect, which Amit had referred to recently. We talk about capacity building in great many ways for all the stakeholders, be it education, health, teachers, healthcare workers. But when it comes to sustainability of that capacity building, where are we? And also, from the funding point of view, here we talk about the ideals of collaboration and, bringing the best from all in order to, reduce the overlap of the work that the NGOs are doing. But when it comes to actual funding, when it comes to actual, deliverables, it's always, expectation is always on the numbers. Okay, what are the numbers? Have you achieved this much? Rather the focus on, the sustainability of the capacity building or the sustainability of the learning is certainly overlooked sometimes. Thank you.
Okay, so I think three main aspects: the inclusion of 10 crore women, what are the leadership lessons, how can we use them actually in building the nation, also the question on the ease of development, and the point on sustainability of capacity. So who wants to go first? I don't think we should have Mirai only answer questions on women entrepreneurs.
Yeah, but I'm dying to answer that
But
question.
Okay, go ahead.
So thank you very much for that. And I think, we can't have Viksit Bharat if 50% of our population isn't actively involved. You're absolutely right. And another figure I'd like to just throw out here is out of 8 lakh cooperatives in this country, we have one of the largest cooperative movements in the world. Hardly 2 to 3% are women-led or with women leaders. With a lot of pushing now, there is a new cooperative policy, and there'll be 2 women on the boards of cooperatives. I mean, what's 2 women going to do? What are they going to do? It's a start, no doubt. So I think we do have a long way to go. I just wanted to say that if we want indeed women to be more active in the public arena, in Viksit Bharat, in the development processes, then there's a lot we have to do to support that, to enable that. One of which is to support the other kinds of work that they do, care work, which is, I'm afraid, almost entirely done by women. We have to start with our own families and our homes and have, men equally sharing in all the household chores and also in care work. So there's a lot that needs to be done. I already mentioned we need to invest in universal childcare. We will in future have to invest in universal elder care as well. So I just thought I'd mention that.
Ashish, maybe you could comment on this point of the ease of doing development, because it's been interesting how and then of course you, Mr. Sinha, but how your foundation has worked so consistently with governments, and I think that's where you believe the real change will actually happen. How do you make it work, Ashish?
No, so the ease of doing business, I think if you step back, while there were a lot of reforms in 1991, they really took away the license Raj more in terms of entry into different businesses and provided opened India up to the world. And
the ease of doing business and development.
Yeah, I was just coming to that. But I think what we didn't do is the micro reforms of real ease of doing business, which is the regulatory state at a lower level, the labor inspector, the fire inspector, the boiler inspector, etc. And I think doing development, like Mirai was saying, is equally hard. Government rules and regulations are onerous. It's not a function of whether it's a development or for-profit sector. So I think when we talk about ease of doing business, it should apply across all sectors. On the issue of women, I feel that, one is we need to create more jobs. Women are as educated as men, if not more educated now. The college enrollment ratio is better. All of that. The social norms have changed. So I think one is just more jobs, because if there are finite jobs in our society, men will grab those jobs, or, we create more jobs, that's number one. 2 is we need to create the enabling conditions. You talked about universal childcare, but also safe housing, safe transport. All these enabling conditions need to be created. And we need to redesign the workforce as well. Women have certain needs around flexibility at certain points in time, and I think we can provide that. Why is it that only 18% of formal sector jobs are with women? So they are grossly underrepresented. While female labor force participation has gone up, it's because we've shown numbers of self-employed and women in agriculture going up. But in actual jobs in the formal sector in services and manufacturing, it's grossly low. And that needs to change. They're skilled, they're ready to go into the workplace, but these enabling conditions, design of the workplace needs to change.
One interesting point on that, of course, will be when we see 33% reservation for women in the legislatures. And I'm hopeful that if it does happen in 2029, how will women in policy making actually make the environment, in a sense, for women in, whether it's in cooperatives, whether it's women in the formal sector, will that bring about a sea change? But Amarjeet, you also wanted to come in. Go
On
ahead.
the women issue, since you are from Trivandrum, and since Kudumshri is where your state and the women's collectives, I think I would like to make this mention because over the last 15 years, one major change which I see silently happening in rural India, and it has consequences for female labor force participation as well. We are aware that in rural India, the female labor force participation has gone up over the last 7-8 years. I have had a chance to study it very carefully and also been associated with the Rural Livelihood Mission for the last 10 years. 100 million women in the country as a part of the program. The program has been studied by, Anjani Kochar from the University of Stanford, Ashwini Deshpande, Irma. All of them have found it has made a tremendous change at the cutting edge level. Clearly, the approach or the answer to the challenges lies in that space. Of these 100 million women, 50 million are currently credit linked. A major success over the last 10 years in particular has been retail credit available to women's collectives on an unprecedented scale. The drone Didi and other, the Krishi Sakhi and Pashu Sakhi, banking correspondent from women, this is one part of the story. It needs to move towards higher order skills, higher order trajectories, because currently the rural female labor force participation rates, which have gone up, if you study deep enough, which I have tried to do in a recent paper, the contributions made by the Rural Livelihood Mission in terms of access to credit for nano enterprises, maybe 1% enterprise, 2% enterprise, because the PLF says that the numbers have gone up in agriculture, more women are working. As you are aware, agriculture is one sector where women are always working. It is just that we've started recognizing it now. So ma'am, the answer to your question, we have a long way to go, but recent trends in rural India do show the pathways. A women-led development is a mandatory requirement for a Viksit Bharat. That's what the Honorable Prime Minister has also been emphasizing. Unless and until we create capabilities among them for higher order businesses, there are some challenges to face. The good news is they are all over the country now. What was happening in Tamil Nadu or Andhra or Telangana or Kerala earlier, today is happening in the whole of the country. But whichever state you go to, you will find women's collectives playing a very active role and impacting on performance of many institutions as well. Thanks.
A quick intervention again, triggered by you, Amarjeet, which is that, policy is important. We've seen what happened with the panchayats when the legislation came in. Everybody said, oh, what will these women do? But we know now what they've done. They've become a force in many states. But I also wanted to say to your earlier question, voice and representation and leadership doesn't just fall out of the sky. It comes through organizing, it comes through women forming their collectives and demanding that they have equal representation and voice at, all tables, on boards and policy tables and so on. So I think, the government's push also for self-help groups, that of the non-profit sector, many of us in this room, is really important. Because more and more and more, as they say, 100 flowers bloom, more and more of these collectives and collaboratives that come up, and then with the government support, with others' support, I think we'll have more women, not only in the workforce, but working for Viksit Bharat with the enabling environment. I mean, even something like maternity benefits. I mean, that's one of my favorite bugbears. I mean, we have maternity benefits, maternity laws for the tiny formal sector of this country. Hardly 2 to 3% of women can avail of them, and more power to them. Yes. But what about the vast informal economy? 94% of the women's workforce is informal. We don't have maternity benefits. We don't have any of those kinds of benefits. So what about that?
So really an enabling environment across those sectors. But final thoughts, perhaps, Mr. Chandra, that point on capacity building and the sustainability of that. It'd be great to hear your views.
Sure. Look, I think the glass is always half empty. But when I went to similar conversations 10 years ago, and we spoke about capacity building, most people's, the question was, what is that? Okay. I think the narrative has shifted a lot in 10 years, and at least it's a part of conversations like this. Still, I think on a scale of 0 to 10, maybe we are at 2 or 3, but at least NGOs now understand and articulate it a lot more. It's something that always impacted them, but they weren't able to articulate it properly into the ecosystem, and they weren't able to really figure out really what the benefits of doing it in a systematic way are today. And I think today that's become more clear. On the flip side, I think donors are also beginning to now understand, at least there's a section of donors, and we monitor very carefully how many donors are investing in capacity in any meaningful way, and that number has changed dramatically over the last decade. So I think this is a, continuum, and we are probably 20, 30% on the way. The more we move, we change the pace of change. To her question, I think we will get to the issue of sustainability earlier, because look, most companies have the reserves that if there's a black swan event, they can last 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. COVID was a great example where even though we had a black swan event, there was a small section of companies that really needed the support of banks and government, etc. Most of them got by, but a lot more in the NGO sector saw stress. And so we need to have organizations at least have, corpus which is enough to cover 6 to 18 months of expenses. But that, I think, is a journey. It is going to take us time to get there. For that, I think a number of things need to happen, including people on both sides understanding it. And I think one very important thing, which is some of the most sophisticated donors need to invest in institutions that will serve the sector as a whole. And some of us are doing that. We're trying to right now build a social stock exchange. I think that will be a transformational framework. The government has initiated it. It's a work in progress for the last 6 years. But if I was to hazard a guess, I think it'll revolutionize retail giving in this country in a very radical way in maybe 2 or 3 years. We've tried to do that for knowledge by supporting platforms like IDR, which has really democratized knowledge going to all of us. We've built platforms like CSIP, etc. But I think we need to build a lot more institutions that will serve everybody in terms of their requirements and capacity.
So I think we are now completely out of time. I'm sorry, but we're completely out of time. But I'm sure you can meet later and just have an informal chat.
Small question.
I think we are completely out of time. Right after this, you can meet and ask any of our panelists. But thank you all. Thank you all to our panelists. It's really been a fantastic morning and a great exchange of ideas. And thank you to a wonderful audience. Thank you so much.
With this, we come to the end of the opening plenary. Thank you so much to all the speakers for sharing their insightful views. Your input has given us food for thought and has certainly set the tone for the discussions for the rest of the day. I now request Dr. Arindam Bhattacharya to felicitate all our panelists as a token of our gratitude and appreciation. Dr. Arindam Bhattacharya is an independent director of several public companies, advisory board member of not-for-profits and academic institutes, angel investor in and mentor to startups, and senior advisor and emeritus partner of Boston Consulting Group. He's also the chairperson for the advisory board of the Indian School of Development Management. We would also like to share a little about the certificates today and how these resonate with our values. The certificate presented to our speakers marks a small planet-forward step by growtrees.com, which wants us to allow users to satisfy a private purpose of getting someone through an e-tree certificate.